Every summer for 9 years, my parents packed my bags, dropped me off at my eccentric aunt's rundown house, and drove away. They told me it was because I was difficult, but the real reason was much simpler. My golden child brother wanted family vacations without me ruining his aesthetic. For 9 summers, I watched their sun-soaked beach photos while I scrubbed floors and helped my aunt build an off-grid cabin. They thought they were dumping their unwanted daughter, but they were actually giving me the exact tools I needed to disappear. The day I received my college diploma, I was already unpacked in a new city, under a new name, with a life they knew nothing about. It took them 4 long years to track me down, but by the time they walked at my driveway begging for help, the tables had completely turned. Make sure to comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Poppy Whitmore. I'm 29 years old, and if you looked at my family's old photo albums, you'd think I vanished every summer. Growing up, my younger brother Julian was the center of our universe. My parents treated him like royalty, while I was treated like an inconvenient roommate. But the real nightmare started when I turned 10. Every year, on exactly June 1st, my parents would pack my bags, load me into the back of the car, and drive 4 hours into rural Oregon. Their destination? My Aunt Martha's isolated, rundown property. My parents' excuse was always the same. Poppy is just too difficult to manage right now. She needs discipline. They made it sound like they were sending me to a summer camp for troubled kids. But the truth was far simpler and infinitely more cruel. Julian wanted family vacations without me ruining his aesthetic. While I was dropped off in the middle of nowhere, my parents and brother spent their summers flying to Hawaii, lounging on beaches in Europe, and staying at 5-star resorts. I only ever saw those trips through glossy postcards Julian sent to brag, or the framed photos my mother proudly displayed around our living room once they returned. For 9 straight years, from age 10 to 19, I was discarded every single summer so my brother could play the role of an only child. My parents thought they were punishing me, but they had no idea what was actually happening in that small Oregon town. My parents thought Aunt Martha's house was a dusty prison sentence, but it turned out to be the ultimate training ground. Martha wasn't just an eccentric relative living in the woods. She was a retired master contractor and a shrewd real estate investor who had spent decades building her own independence. While my parents were busy spoiling Julian at 5-star resorts, Martha handed me a tool belt, a tape measure, and a stack of financial ledgers. They think they're dumping you here to suffer, Poppy, Martha told me during my 2nd summer, her voice steady and sharp. So, let's make sure you leave here so strong they can never touch you again. She didn't just teach me how to survive. She taught me how to build. By 12, I knew framing, basic electrical wiring, and plumbing. But more importantly, Martha taught me financial literacy. She explained compound interest, credit scores, and property deeds. Every dollar I earned helping her renovate local cabins went straight into a high-yield savings trust she quietly established in my name. The contrast between my 2 lives was unreal. In winter, I was the unwanted ghost in my parents' home. In summer, I was an apprentice building a real future. The final turning point came during my 5th summer. I found an email my mother had printed and left on Martha's kitchen counter. It read, "Keep Poppy occupied out there. Julian deserves to experience what it's like to be an only child without her ruining our family dynamic." Reading those words burned away any lingering desire I had for their love. My parents didn't just want a break. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist. They thought they were throwing me away. They had no idea they were giving me the blueprint for my escape. Once I knew the truth, I stopped fighting my parents. In fact, I played the role of the quiet, obedient daughter to absolute perfection. During the school years, I kept my head down, maintained a high GPA, and let my parents believe I was weak, submissive, and entirely dependent on them. They were so consumed with funding Julian's lavish lifestyle, private tutors, and endless hobbies that they barely noticed me. They assumed I would just quietly exist in their shadow forever. Behind the scenes, though, I was executing a carefully calculated long-game strategy. Utilizing every strategy Aunt Martha had taught me, I opened a private bank account the day I turned 18, completely disconnected from my parents' name. While they paid for my basic state college tuition, the absolute bare minimum they felt legally obligated to cover, I worked 2 secret side jobs as a draftsperson and small-scale renovation assistant. Every single paycheck, along with the money from my summer trust, went directly into high-yield investments and building a flawless credit score. By my junior year of college, while Julian was failing his classes and expecting our parents to buy him a brand new sports car, I was quietly buying my first piece of real estate, a neglected duplex across state lines in Washington, using Aunt Martha as my co-signer and advisor. I renovated the entire property myself during my free weekends, transforming it into a high-value asset that began generating steady rental income before I even graduated. My parents thought they were keeping me trapped in a cage by withholding their affection and support. They had no idea I had already unlocked the door, built a bridge, and was just waiting for the exact right moment to walk away forever. The day of my college graduation was supposed to be a major milestone, but to my parents, it was just an inconvenience. 3 weeks before the ceremony, my mother casually dropped the news over dinner. Julian had just finished high school, and as his reward, they were taking him on a month-long luxury tour across Italy. When I asked about my graduation, my father didn't even look up from his phone. "Poppy, you're just getting a bachelor's degree. It's not a big deal. We'll celebrate when we get back." Besides, Julian worked really hard this year. Julian had barely passed, but it didn't matter. They left for Europe 4 days before I walked across the stage. I stood in my cap and gown completely alone, with no family in the bleachers, except for Aunt Martha, who flew in secretly to watch me receive my diploma with highest honors. That afternoon, while my parents were drinking wine in Tuscany, I executed my plan. I drove to their house one last time with a moving truck. Within 3 hours, I packed every single item I owned into the back. I closed the joint bank account my mother had opened for me as a teenager, transferred the balance to my private account, and changed my phone number. I even set up a mail forward directly to a P.O. box in Washington. On the kitchen island, right next to the framed family photo from their Hawaii trip that I was excluded from, I left a simple, printed note. "Thank you for paying my basic tuition and funding the education of the daughter you didn't want. Your duty is complete. Do not try to contact me." By sunset, I was unpacked in my new home, completely off their grid. For 4 full years, I lived in total peace. My Washington duplex flourished, and with Aunt Martha's continued mentorship, I expanded my business, launching a boutique design and contracting firm. I was earning 6 figures, completely independent, and surrounded by a community of real friends who actually valued me. I had completely erased my past. Meanwhile, back home, my parents were discovering the true cost of their favoritism. Without me around as a scapegoat to blame for their problems, the cracks in their perfect family dynamic began to show. Julian, accustomed to being handed everything on a silver platter, flunked out of 2 different colleges within his first 2 years. He refused to work a normal job, claiming everything was beneath him. To maintain his lavish lifestyle, Julian accumulated massive personal debts, which my parents foolishly paid off by refinancing their home and draining their retirement funds. When his demands didn't stop, they finally realized they were drowning. In their desperation, my parents began searching for me. It wasn't out of love, remorse, or a sudden desire to reconcile. They didn't miss their daughter. They were drowning in debt. Julian was a financial disaster, and they needed someone to save them. When they accidentally stumbled upon my business registration while looking up local contractors in the region, they thought their prayers had been answered. They had no idea that the self-sufficient businesswoman they were about to confront was the same girl they used to throw away every summer. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing blueprint house plans in my office when the front door swung open and my parents walked in. They had aged significantly. The arrogant, pristine look they used to wear was gone, replaced by worn clothes and desperate expressions. Behind them stood Julian, looking sullen and out of place in a designer jacket that was clearly beyond their current means. "Poppy," my mother gasped, her eyes welling up with fake tears as she rushed forward. "We've been looking for you for years. How could you just abandon your family like that?" I didn't stand up. I just looked at them with a calm, unbothered expression. "You're trespassing on private property. What do you want?" My father stepped forward, trying to maintain his old authoritative tone. "We're your parents, Poppy. You owe us respect. We found out about your business. You're doing well, while your brother is struggling. We need $150,000 to clear Julian's debts and save our house from foreclosure. We sacrificed everything for you children, and now it's your turn to step up." I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a binder, and slid it across the desk. Inside was an itemized list of every single summer vacation they had taken over 9 years, complete with estimated costs, alongside photos of Julian's luxury trips. "You didn't sacrifice anything for me," I said, my voice ice cold. "You dumped me at Aunt Martha's every single summer for 9 years so your precious son could play only child. You didn't raise me, Aunt Martha did. You didn't build my success. I built it with the tools you threw away." The color completely drained from my father's face as he stared at the binder. My mother began to sob, trying to grab my hand across the desk. "Poppy, please. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. You can't just turn your back on your own blood over childhood grudges." "It's not a grudge, Mom," I replied, pulling my hand away. "It's a consequence." I picked up a pen, wrote down 2 phone numbers on a sticky note, and slid it toward Julian. "Here's the number for a local trade school and a financial counseling service. That is the absolute extent of the help you will ever receive from me. If Julian wants to save your family, he can put on a tool belt and work for it just like I did." My father opened his mouth to argue, but I pressed the button on my desk intercom. "Security, please step into my office to escort these 3 people out." They realized then that there was no leverage, no guilt, and no emotional pull left to exploit. Defeated and humiliated, they turned and walked out of my office, out of my business, and out of my life for good. Looking back, my parents thought they were discarding an unwanted daughter every June 1st. They thought they were giving Julian the world, while leaving me with nothing. But Aunt Martha's punishment ended up being the ultimate blueprint for my freedom, resilience, and success. Now, I want to ask all of you watching, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have helped them or walked away?